Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into something new and honestly pretty powerful that's shaking up Japanese politics. We're talking about a voice that is completely sidestepping traditional media by broadcasting its message every single day from its very own news show.
And that right there, that's pretty much the core message of the Conservative Party of Japan, or Nippon-Hoshu-to. They're a new political force, and their whole argument is that the country is at a total breaking point. And you guessed it, they believe they're the only ones who can actually fix it. So, let's dive in.
So, who are these guys? Well, the party was just launched in 2023 by two pretty well-known figures, best-selling author Hayakawa Naoki and journalist Arimoto Kayori. And here's the kicker. They're not bothering with traditional media. Instead, they're using their daily YouTube show, News Atha Eiji, as a direct pipeline to voters.
Their big argument is that, look, both the government and the opposition have totally failed. So their entire platform is built on this narrative of crisis. And their solution is this call for a pretty radical return to what they define as true Japanese strength and sovereignty.
So, let's talk about how they see the world. A huge part of their worldview is built around this idea of really serious external threats. I mean, from their perspective, Japan is basically surrounded by hostile powers. Now, you'll see Russia and North Korea pop up on their radar for sure. But their main focus, overwhelmingly, is on the rising power of China. They see China as a genuine existential threat, and not just in one way, but on a whole bunch of different fronts. And when it comes to the military side of things, they argue that the current government's response has just been way too weak. They say it's doing nothing to deter what they see as a really clear attempt by China to seize Japanese territory. But, their concern isn't just about ships and planes. It goes deeper. They're raising alarms about what they call infiltration into Japanese universities. They allege this isn't just innocent academic exchange. They see it as a systematic effort to get their hands on critical technology and research, and then funnel it right back to China. But here's a really key point for the Nippon-Hoshu-to. Those external threats, they're only so dangerous because, in their view, the system at home is completely broken. They're really tapping into that widespread public frustration, with all the political scandals and the stagnant economy. They're basically painting this picture of a nation in decay, led by a totally failed political class. So as far as they're concerned, voters have no real choice. On one hand, they hammer the ruling LDP for being, in their words, too close to China. And on the other hand, they say the opposition parties are just completely out of touch, obsessed with things that don't matter to everyday people. And this leads us right into one of their biggest domestic hot-button issues, immigration. They love to point to specific examples to make their case, like this one village, Shimuka-pu. Get this, almost 37% of the residents there are foreign nationals. And because of local rules, they can actually vote in local referendums. Now, for the Nippon-Hoshu-to, that's a huge problem. And they back this up with numbers. They'll point to something like this, 75,905. What is that? Well, that's the record number of foreign driver's licenses that were converted to Japanese ones in just 1 year. To the party, this isn't just a statistic, it's proof of a flawed system. They argue the process is way too easy and even poses a public safety risk. So you see, for them, this whole battle isn't just about politics or the economy. It's much deeper. It's intensely cultural. They're pushing back hard against things like allowing separate surnames for married couples, which they see as a direct attack on the traditional family unit. Okay, so they've laid out this pretty grim picture of crisis, both at home and abroad. So the big question is, what's their actual plan? What do they want to do about it? Let's take a look at the solutions they're putting on the table. All right, their platform is basically a direct counterpunch to the status quo. It's really built on 4 main pillars, and all of them are designed to do 2 things: restore Japan's economic vitality and beef up its national sovereignty. So when it comes to the economy, what's the plan? Well, their number 1 priority is super simple: put more money back into the pockets of regular Japanese people. They're arguing that the quickest way to get the economy moving, and, just as importantly, ease the burden on families struggling with rising costs, is to cut the consumption tax, especially, they say, on food.
It's an immediate relief that people will feel. And then there's energy. They want to completely scrap subsidies for renewable energy, which they blame for skyrocketing electricity prices. Instead, they want to invest in modern, efficient thermal power plants to guarantee cheap, stable energy. And they'll often point to a place like Okinawa, which has some of the highest electricity bills in the whole country, as the perfect example of the failed policies they want to tear up.
So, okay, big goals, big promises. But how does a party that was basically born on YouTube plan to actually make any of this happen? What's the path from a web show to the halls of government? Now, if you look at the national polls, their numbers are still pretty small, down in the 1% to 2% range. But, and this is what the hosts themselves claim, they say the political establishment sees them as a huge threat. They argue that the amount of media attention they get, mostly criticism, is way out of proportion for a party their size.
And really, this is their whole strategy, their endgame. It's a grassroots insurgency. The goal is to turn that online following into actual real-world political power. They want to run candidates in national elections, win seats in the Diet, and basically force their agenda into the national conversation. So the rise of the Nippon-Hoshu-to really makes you ask a pretty fundamental question about where Japanese politics is headed. Is this just a fringe movement, fueled by some temporary anger that'll burn out? Or are we looking at the new face of conservatism in Japan? That's the big question, and honestly, the answer is still being written.